Namaste, welcome, bless you for pressing play. A walking on water moment. Walking on water is not natural to humans. Actually, it is rather impossible for us to walk on water unless we have some sort of assistance. Yet, we very often go down the road of believing that we can in fact walk on water, knowing full well that we cannot. Why then do we put ourselves into the situations where we feel so capable and in charge, only to find out that something was missing? We started out with great enthusiasm and a desire to achieve, and then somehow our vision just fades away. When this happens to you, then discouragement comes knocking at your door. No one likes to open that door. Nothing can isolate you like discouragement can. Discouragement is like an intense bitterness within our very soul. It can make us feel like an outcast. It can be a very lonely place in which we find ourselves. There is, however, a remedy for this. It is not our walking on water moment that is special, but rather it is our attitude. Often we hear that it is not how we start, but how we finish. So let us look at this approach to walking on water. In the book of Matthew, chapter 14, from verse 22 to 33, we read that Jesus sent his disciples in a boat across the Lake of Galilee to the other side. It was late that day, and by the time they were halfway across, they were deep into the night. They had been struggling to row as the boat was being tossed about by the strong wind and the troubled water. Verse 25. Now, in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the water. Jesus knew they were in trouble and were struggling to make headway due to the bad weather, and that is why he went to them. It is quite something to understand how divine help appears in our lives when we least expect it, and very timely as well. Verse 26. And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. This is so often how we also react when we face a situation that we do not quite understand. We become very fearful. Verse 27. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid." How wonderful and reassuringly cheerful words can be to a friend or even a stranger in need of encouragement. Your cheerful approach can drive away fear and set them free from that grip of fear. Verse 28. And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Was this a foolish thing to do? I mean, would you do something foolish just because someone gave you permission? Peter would definitely have tested his own request with one foot still in the boat and the other planted on the water. If his foot was to sink, he would have clung to the boat. Verse 29. So the Lord said, "Come." And when Peter had come down from the boat, he walked on the water to come to Jesus. Let's take a moment to consider what is actually taking place here and how very similar situations may impact us today. In many difficulties that we also face, Peter was aware of the stormy weather conditions. Among all of those in that boat, it was Peter who seemed to recognize more clearly that their boat did not represent much in the way of security in those stormy conditions, but rather standing beside Jesus and holding on to him was far more secure and the safest place to be. So Peter leaves the boat and walks on the water to Jesus. But he does not make it all the way. Why? Verse 30. But when Peter saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. Peter, having got this far, seems to have taken his eyes off of Jesus and begins to start to consider the wind and the surrounding conditions. One would have thought that he would have considered the wind-swept weather before embarking on that journey to walk across the water. This is what happens when you try to figure out the essence of faith by using only your understanding. Peter now finds himself totally helpless as he begins to sink. Have you ever been in a situation where you are helpless and you get that sinking feeling, yet somehow you rose above it? Peter rises out of his predicament. He cries out saying, Lord, save me. This is a prayer that is always answered. How did you rise out of your predicament? Did you have help? Perhaps you also reached out to the saving grace, the outstretched hand of the Lord. And at that time, did you not even realize it? Perhaps your prayer was also, Lord, save me. In verse 31, and immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? So here is a lesson to all of us. Do not doubt. But there is far more to this. Verse 33, and when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. This short verse in itself speaks volumes. Once they were in the boat, there was no need for the wind. Why? Because the test was over. Jesus said to Peter, O you of little faith. There was nothing wrong with Peter's faith. It was the doubt that Peter had towards his faith. His doubt diminished his faith and caused him to sink. In chapter 15 and verse 22, we find a situation where a woman is desperate for help, and she also has to face a challenge to her faith. And it becomes her walking on water moment. Verse 22, and behold, a certain woman of Canaan came to Jesus and cried to him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely possessed. Verse 23. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came to him, urging him, saying, Send her away, for she cries after us. This woman was not considered an Israelite, and as such, she should not have referred to Jesus as Son of David. It may appear here that this woman was not welcome. However, the following 2 verses expose the reality of those times. Note that the disciples said, She cries after us. She was not crying after the disciples. She was crying after Jesus. Verse 24. But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This was the answer that Jesus gave to his disciples, and it was the truth. But no nation can claim total ownership to faith in Christ. Verse 25. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. This is so totally amazing. Different words, but same prayer as Peter. Verse 26. But Jesus answered and said, It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. Here we see how the Lord appeals to this woman, a mother, and challenges her about how mothers would never take food out of the mouths of their own children and give it to little dogs. Then see their own children go hungry. Amazing to hear that this woman is not offended, but continues to show that she is a true mother, caring about the affliction of her very own daughter. Verse 27. And she said, Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. This was her walk on water moment. This is the point where her doubt disappears and her faith carries her to the heart of the Lord. Verse 28. Then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. What a wonderful answer. Let it be as you desire. So what does walking on water actually represent? Quite simply, it means stepping out in faith, but not faith in something that is intellectually crazy, but faith in what is godly and righteous. Most times, we have confidence in decisions we make and desires that we put into practice. However, this does not guarantee that we will be successful. But our faith will be tested. We must have an attitude that is covered in faith. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, and verse 16, but without faith it is impossible to please him, for all who come to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder for all who diligently seek him. Father, please help us, bless us, bring us into one heart and one mind with you. Teach us the truth, no matter the cost. Show us the truth, no matter the cost. Father, thank you. Peace be with each and every one of you. Namaste.